I once believed that if I lived responsibly, patiently, and demanded nothing from anyone, people would respect that. I held on to the land my grandfather gave me for over 10 years, paid all the taxes, and planned to build a small house by the stream where I envisioned my home. But then, one day, I discovered that my parents had secretly transferred that land to my cousin for $100. This story is not just about a property dispute. It's a journey of realizing that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who cross the deepest boundaries. And sometimes the only thing that protects you is a small dirt road that others despise. If you've ever been considered selfish just because you wanted to keep what belonged to you, if you've ever stayed silent to keep the peace until that very silence caused you loss, then perhaps this story is somewhat similar to yours. I will tell it from the beginning. About the grandfather I loved most, about the promise he left behind, and about the moment I was forced to stand up, not out of anger, but because I finally understood that self-respect is never something you need permission for. My name is Mackenzie. I'm 34 years old. The story begins when I was a 7-year-old girl who loved walking barefoot on a piece of land with a small stream winding under the old oak trees. That place belonged to my maternal grandfather, Franklin. He wasn't just the one who taught me to identify every type of leaf, but also the first person who taught me what was valuable, not money, but land, trust, and things worth protecting. Every weekend, he would take me there. He held a wooden stick pointing to each tree trunk, each large rock, and said, "Do you see? This land is special because it has water, cool breezes, and a place to stop. Good land has a soul." I didn't fully understand what he meant then, but I liked the way he spoke as if the land was alive, breathing. And I felt a silent bond between him and that land, as if it wasn't just property, but a part of his character. When I turned 18, he was old and frail. On that birthday, he didn't celebrate with cake, but called me to a corner of the table, his hand trembling as he placed it on mine and said, "I've seen you care for that land as if it were your future. Wait until you're 21 and I will give it to you." At that time, I thought he was just joking, but he kept his word. 3 years later, on my 21st birthday, he handed me a large envelope, inside which was the notarized land use right certificate. 10 acres by the stream, where I used to draw my dream house with a pencil in my notebook. All I could do was hug him tightly and say, "I will protect it. I promise." And I kept my promise. For 13 years, I paid all the taxes. I didn't rush to build anything. I saved every month redrawing the design for a small 3-bedroom house with a porch overlooking the water. I thought I had done everything right. I thought if I was diligent, kind, and patient, everyone around me would respect that. But I was wrong. I graduated college with a graphic design degree. After graduating, I didn't hope for much. Just a stable job and a peaceful enough future to build a house by that stream. I called it homecoming because in my mind, that's where I would return whenever life got too noisy. My starting salary wasn't high. I split the rent from my tiny apartment with my best friend, Audrey. She worked in real estate, while I worked as a designer at a small company, about a 40-minute drive from the land. We lived frugally. Every time I got paid, I'd transfer a small amount into an account named House Building Fund. I still often drove out to that land at the end of each month. Sometimes I'd just sit for hours on the rock next to the large oak tree, listening to the sound of the water and sketching out the first drafts. A 3-bedroom house, a low-slung roof, with a wide porch large enough for a long bench and a pot of bougainvillea. I was never in a hurry. My grandfather once advised, "Building a house doesn't just take money. It takes the right time when you feel truly ready." I carried those words like a compass. Whenever anyone asked why I hadn't built yet, I would just smile and say, "I'm waiting for the right moment." My parents seemed supportive at the time. My father, Douglas, told me during one dinner, "It's good that you've held on to the land. Just leave it be. The land will appreciate on its own." My mother liked to talk about plants. She suggested planting lavender along the stream bank because it was beautiful and kept mosquitoes away. I truly believed they were happy for me. I had no idea that at that very moment they were already thinking of a different plan. Looking back now, I see many signs I missed. One time my mother told me, It's a waste of land to sit unused for so long. Another time, my father casually asked, "Suppose Jason asked to use a small part of your land to set up a woodworking shop. Would you mind?" I just thought they were casual questions. How could I have imagined that people could smile at me and say gentle things, while in their minds they had already drawn up a plan that had no place for me in it? I continued to live by what I believed in: kindness, caution, and responsibility. I thought that was enough to be respected. I was wrong yet again. If there was one moment I could go back to, it would probably be that 4th of July family party. A seemingly harmless party. Just laughter, the smell of barbecue, and idle chatter around the outdoor dining table. Jason, my cousin, was talking more than usual that day. He's 3 years older than me, had changed careers 3 times, worked as a restaurant manager and a rideshare driver, and then quickly took a woodworking course. I used to think he was just someone finding his way. But that day, his voice was full of confidence as he told my father, "My friends up in the mountains are making 6 figures, building small cabins and renting them out glamping style. You don't need a lot of land, just some natural scenery, and you're raking in money." I stood nearby, saying nothing. I recognized the look my father gave him, then the same look he used to give me when I got a college scholarship. A few weeks later, during another dinner, my mother cut a piece of cake, then gently said, "Do you think you should share a part of your land with Jason? After all, that piece has been empty for a long time." I laughed. I told my mother, "Just because I haven't built yet doesn't mean I'm not using it. I'm preparing." "What about Jason? Is he changing careers again?" I didn't pay much attention to my mother's expression when I said that. But that day, I started to feel like an outsider in my own home. Something I couldn't name. As if something had changed. Jason later approached me too. He spoke directly, without beating around the bush. "If you're not using that land, I could invest a little. Build cabins and split the profits. A win-win." I refused. Gently, very clearly. I still remember saying, "I'm sorry, I'm playing the long game. I don't want to turn that place into a resort." Jason shrugged, forcing a smile. "Oh, I just asked." The conversation stopped there, but the atmosphere between me and everyone else after that day never returned to normal. I started to notice the whispering glances of some relatives. A female cousin whispered in my ear while cleaning up, "That land should probably be used for the whole family." I said nothing. I just quietly went home, opened my dream house drawing again, and for the first time felt like I had to fight to keep what was mine. I received a call from Mr. Harold one early spring afternoon. He was an elderly farmer living next to my land, kind and discreet. He used to know my grandfather, so he'd occasionally call to inquire if he noticed anything unusual. "Mackenzie, has anyone new been allowed to access your land lately?" he asked. "There's been a black pickup truck driving through there a few times now. An unfamiliar vehicle." I paused. I hadn't given anyone permission. The next day, I took half a day off and drove straight there. The small dirt road leading to the lot was still damp after the rain, but there were clear signs of new tire tracks. Near the large oak tree where I used to draw my first designs were cigarette butts, empty beer cans, and some plastic bag fragments. I stood there speechless. The feeling wasn't anger, but as if someone had snuck into my dream, trampled on it, and left without realizing what they had done wrong. I called Jason. He answered with a casual tone. "Oh, I just stopped by to check out the land for a bit. Your dad said it was probably fine." My dad said what? I almost couldn't believe my ears. "Well, your dad said you weren't doing anything with the land, so I just came to hang out. No big deal." I gripped the phone tightly. "Jason, that's my land. I didn't permit you to enter. Please don't use family as an excuse to cross boundaries like that." He was silent for a few seconds, then gave a faint laugh. "Geez, you're making a big deal out of this? It's family. No need to be so formal." I didn't reply again. I hung up and drove straight to my parents' house. They were surprised to see me. Mom was preparing dinner and Dad was reading the newspaper. "I want to ask you something. Did you tell Jason he was allowed on my land?" My mother put down her knife, looking at me. He just went out there to hang out for a bit, dear. He didn't build anything. No one asked me. No one asked for permission. He left trash. He didn't respect the place. My father spoke up, his voice tinged with irritation. You've had that land for 8 years. You haven't done anything with it except pay taxes. Jason has ideas. You should be more open-minded. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. My idea is to build a house, but not in the way Jason thinks. And even if I haven't built yet, that land is still mine. No one has the right to decide for me. The atmosphere in the kitchen thickened. My mother shook her head. Why are you making such a fuss about everything? I looked at them. The two people who once taught me about respect, who once encouraged me to cherish the land. Now they were turning their backs on the very principles they had taught. That night, for the first time, I sat in my car in a supermarket parking lot and couldn't hold back the tears. Not because of Jason, but because my parents had started taking someone else's side. And that person wasn't me. 2 weeks after the confrontation with my parents, I tried to reassure myself that everything would pass. I stopped texting or calling Jason. I also limited visits to my parents. I thought if I stayed silent, everyone would understand. Then everything would go back to normal. But some things, once cracked, cannot be healed by silence. That afternoon, as I was checking my mailbox at the apartment, I found a strange envelope. It was sent from the local tax office and addressed to Jason Matthews. The address listed was my apartment. I froze for a few seconds. My heart beat faster than usual. I knew I shouldn't open someone else's mail. But the feeling that something was wrong prompted me to call Audrey. Do you think, I asked, my voice dry, there's a chance they transferred the land to Jason? Audrey was silent. After a long pause, she said, I think you should go to the land records office tomorrow. The next morning, I took the day off and drove straight to the administrative building. Inside the office, the fluorescent lights were dim and the air was cold, strangely quiet. A man in glasses named Martin typed land information into the computer as I recited the parcel numbers from memory. Just a few seconds later, he looked at the screen and then turned to me. You're Mackenzie Reynolds, right? I nodded. The land was transferred to Jason Matthews 3 months ago. The filing date was February 12th. My eyes blurred. I thought I heard wrong. Could you repeat that, please? Martin turned the screen for me to see. Clear black text on a white background. Current owner, Jason Matthews. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood still as if everything inside me had been drained. It was like standing inside a house that someone had been dismantling brick by brick for years, while I still believed it was sturdy. There's a condition in the original transfer record, Martin added, flipping through the document file. Your grandfather, Franklin Reynolds, retained the right to transfer the property after his death. And that right was recorded as transferring to his direct heir, your father. I tried to stay calm. Meaning my father used that right to sell the land to Jason? Martin nodded. For $100. $100. The land I had nurtured for over a decade, paid taxes on time every quarter, planned for every year, sat by the stream every month, writing down my dreams, and they sold it to my cousin as if it meant nothing, as if I had never existed in that equation. I printed all the records, put them in an envelope, and drove to my parents' house. Unannounced. My mother opened the door. I didn't wait for her to ask. I went straight into the living room and placed the papers on the table. My father sat there, glanced at them, then remained silent. How long has it been? I asked. No one answered. How long have you two been acting like you can take my land without saying a word? My mother sighed. Jason is starting a business. He needs a fresh start. The family has to support each other, dear. And what about me? I choked out. Am I not family? That night, I didn't go straight home. I drove alone to the land. Or rather, the land that used to be mine, as if I needed a farewell or an answer no one at home could give me. I stopped my car by the roadside, not venturing deep inside. I no longer had the right to. I sat in the car for a very long time, with no music and no lights on. The night was pitch dark, with only the sound of insects and the familiar rustle of wind through the trees. I felt like I was sitting on the sidelines of my own life. A supporting character in a family story rewritten by others. And then, suddenly, a memory returned. I remember once as a child, my grandfather led me along the land, pointing to the small dirt road leading from the gate to the edge of the stream. He said, "You know, the access to a piece of land is often worth more than the land itself. Without a road, land becomes a locked box. No one can get in, no one can get out." At the time, I just nodded because I didn't fully understand. But now I understood better than ever. The next morning, I called Audrey again. "I need to know, the access road to the land, is it a separate parcel?" Audrey was silent for a few seconds. "Are you thinking about that road?" "I need to know what I still hold." Just a few days later, with the help of the lawyer Audrey recommended, Rebecca Winters, I discovered a truth that no one in my family had noticed, or deliberately ignored. The road leading to the land, nearly half a kilometer long and about 60 feet wide, was a separate parcel of land. And the current owner was still me. It wasn't included in the transfer deed. There was no clause allowing Jason to pass through it. There was no document recording the right-of-way. Legally, Jason now owned a locked-in piece of land. I don't know how to describe my feelings at that moment. It wasn't a victory, nor was it exactly relief. But it was a strangely calm sensation. As if someone had just handed me a small key that didn't open everything, but was the beginning for me to reclaim what had been stolen. Rebecca placed her hand on the file and told me, "No one can get in without your permission. You hold the opportunity for fair negotiation." I nodded. I didn't want retaliation. I didn't want to hurt the people who had hurt me. But I knew this time, I wouldn't back down. If I didn't protect my boundaries, who else would? I didn't speak to my family for almost a week. No calls, no texts, no social media posts. My silence wasn't avoidance. It was a form of self-defense and preparation. With Rebecca's assistance, I began taking small but firm steps. First, I requested a new survey of the entire access road to the land, a small but powerful parcel of land that I still owned. Next, I sent formal notification letters to my parents and Jason, asserting my ownership of the accessway and demanding the cessation of all unauthorized use. No one responded. 2 days later, I hired a security company that specialized in rural gate installations. They came, installed a sturdy iron gate at the entrance to the access road, and put up a no trespassing sign by county regulations, along with the parcel number and applicable laws. I had photos, videos, and confirmation documents. That evening, I drove out there. The new gate stood tall at the edge of the dirt road, standing firm like a declaration. The line is here. From now on, everything will be different. I didn't feel joy or satisfaction. I just felt calm. The next morning, Jason called. His voice was irritable, full of annoyance. "What's with the gate?" "I can't get in. I have valid land papers." I replied simply, "But you don't have the right to cross my land." "We're family, Mackenzie." He snapped. "Does this need to be a big deal?" I didn't answer immediately. A moment later, I said softly, "Jason, you stopped being family when you and my parents secretly took what belonged to me." The call ended with no further words from either side. By the afternoon, my father called, for the first time in weeks. "You're overreacting, Mackenzie." I didn't argue. He continued. "Jason has put down a deposit he's solicited, construction bids. You're ruining his whole plan." I kept my voice calm. "Just like you ruined my plan, right?" Silence on the other end of the line stretched. I didn't expect an apology. I just needed them to understand that every action has consequences. "So, what do you want now?" my father finally asked. "Fairness," I said. "Either Jason buys the right-of-way at market value, or he sells the land back to me at a corresponding price." I didn't expect them to agree immediately. But at least this time I was the one setting the terms. No one had the right to decide for me on matters that belonged to me anymore. 3 days after the call, I received a text from my mother. Short and to the point. Can we meet? No arguments, just to talk. I agreed, but requested the meeting take place at my lawyer's office. I wanted a neutral space, and this time I wasn't coming alone. Rebecca sat next to me as my parents and Jason entered the small meeting room. Jason was last, clutching a file, his eyes lacking their usual confidence. My father looked tired. My mother quietly watched me, her eyes sad, though I couldn't tell if it was from regret or from lamenting something they could no longer control. Rebecca spoke first, her voice as calm as a well-rehearsed recording. She clearly stated that Mackenzie is the legal owner of the sole access road leading to the land parcel. There is no document recording a right of use. No verbal agreement is recognized. Therefore, Jason cannot access the property unless Mackenzie permits it. Jason sat still, head bowed. After a moment, he said softly, "I didn't know this. I thought everything was already arranged. Uncle Douglas said there were no issues." I looked at my father. He avoided my gaze. "Jason," I said, speaking for the first time, "you built your plan on land that never had guaranteed access. You might be angry at me for putting up a barrier, but try to imagine how I felt when I discovered the land I had protected for over a decade was transferred behind my back. Now there are two options," I continued. 1. Jason buys the right to use the access road at market value. 2. I buy the land back from Jason at a price that deducts all the taxes I've paid over the past 10 years. My father frowned. "Do you know how much that land is worth now?" "Of course," I replied. "And I also know every penny I've spent to keep it, not just in money, but in all my trust and effort." After a moment, Jason spoke. "I need time to think." Rebecca nodded. "We will send a written proposal. Response deadline in 5 days." As they stood up to leave, no one said anything further. My mother looked at me one last time, her eyes seemingly wanting to say something, but no words came out. I didn't need them to speak anymore either. At this moment, silence was no longer forbearance. I was in control. I was the voice of someone who knew her worth and knew how to protect it. The final agreement was signed, almost a month after our meeting. Jason agreed to sell the land back to me at a price roughly equivalent to market value, minus all the taxes I had paid over 11 years. I didn't receive an apology, but honestly, I no longer expected any warmth. I just wanted clarity, and I got it. On the day I regained ownership, I didn't celebrate. I just drove out there alone, opened the gate, and walked slowly along the familiar dirt road from the entrance to the edge of the stream. The feeling wasn't like getting the land back, but more like getting myself back. I stood by the large oak tree where trash had once been dumped, now clean. I gently touched its rough bark as if thanking an old friend for waiting for my return. That day, I decided I wouldn't wait any longer. I didn't need to wait until I had enough money to build a large 3-bedroom house. I would start with a small cabin, a place enough to shelter, enough to breathe, enough to start over. I contacted a local construction team that Audrey recommended. They immediately understood my desire. Not grand, not luxurious, just sturdy and soulful. We chose a 16 by 24-foot design with a sleeping loft and a porch facing the stream. I chose every piece of wood, every paint color, every window. Not out of pickiness, but because I wanted every detail to remind me that I am the one making the choices. No one would force me, suggest to me, or decide for me anymore. While waiting for construction, I began rewriting the design for the larger house, my true version. Not that of the young girl who once just wanted her parents' pat on the back. I also hired a landscape architect to redesign the land into smaller areas. A vegetable garden, rows of trees, and a spot for a long outdoor table where I could later invite people I truly trusted to dine with me. I don't know how long it will be until I can afford to build my dream house, but I know this time no one can quietly take it from me again. I also started writing in a journal regularly every morning, just as the sun peeked through the trees. In it, I didn't write about pain. I wrote about things that were slowly coming back to life. A strange thing happens when you start setting boundaries. Everything doesn't just get quieter. Everything also returns to its proper orbit. One late afternoon, while clearing out old cardboard boxes in a corner of the house, I found the brown envelope my grandfather had given me when I was 21. Inside was the original transfer deed, a few photos of my grandfather and me by the stream, and a handwritten letter. The paper had yellowed slightly, his handwriting still familiar, round, firm. Mackenzie, land is something that can be given and can be lost. But the only thing you should never let anyone take from you is your boundary. Not everyone will understand why someone holds on to a piece of undeveloped land for so long. But you don't need to explain. A kind person will never ask for a reason when you protect what belongs to you. To love is to give, but not to sacrifice yourself for someone else's life. I read that last line over and over again. For so many years, I thought that if I was patient and quiet and sacrificed a little for my loved ones, our affection would be preserved. I was wrong. Affection can only truly be preserved when it is built on respect. On the day the cabin was completed, I invited Audrey, Rebecca, Mr. Harold, the neighboring farmer who always silently supported me, and a few close friends to dinner. No wine, no cake, just a simple meal among the trees. Everyone sat around the long wooden table I had painted myself, listening to the gentle flow of the stream at the foot of the hill and sharing small stories. My mother called the next day. She didn't come that day, but her voice was softer. Your father and I are going to family counseling. We realized we've become too accustomed to controlling everything, even when we had no right to. I don't know how long it will take to heal those cracks. But for the first time in years, I felt like I could begin to rebuild that relationship out of a sense of responsibility. Because sometimes daring to say no is the way to maintain lasting family ties. That evening, I sat alone on the porch. Every time the wind blew through the trees, I felt as if my grandfather was somewhere near. Saying nothing. Just smiling. I no longer held on to this land as something to prove anything to anyone. I held on to it because it was where I learned to hold on to myself. After all, I realized that the most valuable thing to hold on to is not a piece of land, but one's boundaries and self-worth. Family is a place for love, not a place where anyone has the right to decide for you. Protecting what belongs to you is not selfishness. It's how you choose not to lose yourself amidst what seems most familiar. If you've ever had to set boundaries with loved ones or been hurt by things seemingly done for family, please share your story in the comments. Who knows, someone might need a word of empathy from you. Thank you for staying until the end of the journey. If you wish to continue listening to real-life stories that are gentle, profound, and truly authentic, please subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes peace begins with the smallest thing: choosing to stand by yourself.